me is, you don't care enough to proofread your work or spell check it, what is their reaction to that going to be? What do you think I do with a resume when I get a resume and there's a typo in it? Yeah, round file it. Because if you don't care enough about your resume to make sure it's right, have it proofread, you're probably not going to care very much about the work that I'm asking you to do. And your clients are going to feel the same way. And that's not normally the case, but is that how people react to it? When I say that's not normally the case, it's most people who have a typo in their resume aren't saying, hey, I don't care about you. That's what's being perceived. And they're not given that second chance. Because we all are very harsh, would you agree? We make judgments like that, and once we've made a judgment, how difficult is it to step to the other side and undo that judgment? Very, very difficult. Whether it's I don't like that building, or I don't like that person, or I think that person's great. Undo that initial judgment is very difficult. It's just the way we're wired. So as designers, as architects, as somebody who is going to build their whole career around other people buying into your ideas, you want to make sure that you take this opportunity of this precedent study, not just to be some burden, oh, Jeff asked me to do this precedent study, I got to go look something up, I got to research something. Oh, so I hate research, I hate writing, I'm in architecture school to learn how to design. I've heard this argument before, many, many times. Do you think understanding how to do a precedent study is fundamental to being a good designer? Probably. I would say it's absolutely. Would you say probably not?
I said probably yes.
Oh, probably yes. I would say it's absolutely fundamental. Because you don't know everything, contrary to your own belief. I'm not even going to chuckle. You guys are proud today. You don't know everything, right? You don't know about the turning radius of a school bus. Does anybody know the turning radius of a school bus off the top of their head? I don't either, but I know where to go find out about that. And my job as the architect is to take all that information, all those inputs, balance the priority of those inputs, and arrive at a solution that incorporates all of that. I don't know everything there is to know about light fixtures, but I know the right people to go talk to. I don't know everything there is, all I do all day long is deal with school projects, but I don't know everything there is to know about schools. If I have a question, I go ask somebody. That's similar to doing precedence research. Give you a perfect example of some precedence research that we're doing right now. School district, we're looking at gender neutral restrooms. When they said, hey, this is something we want to explore, I said, I know nothing about it. So I went to the internet and said, hey, is this a thing? Are we making this up, or is this a thing? And I found some people who were doing it and found some research, and it's a very early thing, but now we're starting to engage in that conversation and develop those ideas. So if you ask me about daylighting in a classroom, that's a whole different thing. There's tons and tons and tons and tons of research that supports that should be done, both anecdotal and very objective research that has been done. So do I claim to know everything there is to know about daylighting in the classroom? No. I know a lot about it, but I still, if I was going to try to apply that idea in a design that I was doing, would still go back, relook at the things I'm already aware of, hopefully look at things that have been done since the last time I looked into this issue, and come to the best solution based on the information that I had available to me. So architecture and interior design is not just this purely creative thing that happens outside of reality, that can happen in a vacuum. It differs from other arts in that respect. It's not just, hey, I go buy a canvas, I buy some paints, and I can put anything I want on that canvas. It's like a canvas, but I have all these constraints that I have to respond to. And it means that I better be educated about them. I better have gone out and done my due diligence to understand to the best of my ability those constraints. And to understand to the best of my ability, all those people that are going to be using those spaces. So if I've got 850 students in a school, I got 850 different interpretations of that space. And that's a difficult thing. Obviously, you can't design a space that suits everybody's every need, but it's important that you understand. And I can't just go, hey, I went to elementary school, therefore I can design an elementary school. Are elementary schools the same thing now as they were in the Stone Age when I went to elementary school? No, things change.
They had metal playgrounds.
They did have metal playgrounds and sand and sandbox. Don't have that anymore. Blows my mind. We ended up okay, but now it's like a whole different world. You can't have that. You gotta have special plastic coated playgrounds, special safety fall surfaces.
Rubber mats.
I don't understand. Well, it's unsanitary. Yeah, and all sorts of reasons why you can't have it. I can remember when I was a kid, we dug like tunnels in the sand. You came in, you had the dirt and whatnot in your hand. I mean, just was a different world. Don't have that anymore. Don't have wood chips. Have to have these special safety surfaces that kids fall on. That's a whole specialty in of itself. So anybody who tells you they know everything about safety services who doesn't do it for a living is probably full of it. So as an architect, do I have to go become educated about safety services? Absolutely. If I'm going to include them in my projects, I better know something about them. But on a bigger scale, trying to understand the fundamentals of architecture, how we arrange space, how we create hierarchy, how we create relationships within buildings like human to whole. Those things we start to understand as architects from looking at buildings that are really well done. If I want to understand proportion, I may look at the great Renaissance cathedrals because they understood proportion. Now, I'm not saying you should take and copy. You know, if you're building a cathedral today, then you should go and say, okay, I'm going to pick a Renaissance cathedral, and I'm just going to copy it and bring it over here. No, but if you're going to design a cathedral today, it would probably behoove you to understand what they did and what's relevant about what they did to what you might be doing now. And proportions might be important. In fact, proportions are important in all architecture. But we start to understand how to apply those things by looking at how other people have done them. So in this book, you're going to find a whole host of different buildings. Some you may be very aware of, some you may not be aware of. But what you're going to find, and I'm going to pass this book around obviously, is a simple plan, and then you're going to find diagrams. And each one of these diagrams explores a singular idea about the building, whether it's symmetry and balance. Here's a floor plan. This building is definitely not symmetrical, but it's balanced. And those are two very different things. How do you illustrate that? Well, I could just let the person assume and look at the floor plan that it is, or I can do a very simple diagram that illustrates that. That's what you're going to see through here. And I will ask you guys to do singular diagrams like this. In fact, the first step to this, tonight you're going to select the building. We're going to go through some precedent studies. Then you have a week off for spring break. When you come back from spring break, there's some things I want you to come back with. Obviously, a better understanding of the building that you have selected, but I want you to boil it down to this simple series of sentences. My building is important because. And you may have like 8, 10, 12 reasons why your building is important. My building is important because it has symmetrical circulation. My building is important because of the structural system. My building is important because of the way it creates hierarchy. My building is important because of natural light. Whatever it is, I'm not telling you. What I don't want you to do is go, oh, I picked Stephen Hull's chapel in Seattle, and my building is important because of the plan-to-section relationship. My building is important because of geometry. My building is important because of partie. My building is important because of hierarchy. Because when you come back with just that, I'm going to say, oh, your building is important because of hierarchy. Can you expand on that, please? And you're going to look at me and go, well, it's hierarchy. You say, well, you said your building was important because of it, so what is hierarchy? So don't just take the diagrams that have already been done and say, well, my project's done, here's the diagrams. I'm giving you this as a starting point. I expect your diagrams to expand upon that. So when you come back after spring break, March 20th, to be exact, I will expect to see to be able to have a conversation with you. That conversation is going to allow us to individually, so we're going to be working pretty much individually on March 20th, that conversation is going to allow us to direct what you do next, to direct what you're going to show us and how you're going to show us. Do I build a model for that? Do I do a diagram for that? Do I do a series of diagrams? Do I do a floor plan drawing? Do I do a section drawing? It's going to vary for each one of your studies. Following 2 Mondays, I will not be here. So 27th and April, whatever, I won't be here. Yay, we're all in class. No, I actually have class. I'll make sure that there are people here in my absence, but those people will be working with you specifically on this project. So, if you don't come prepared to work with them, what value are those 2 evenings to you? Little to none. I have a wedding in Brazil I have to go to.
What date was it again? March
27th of April.
of April?
27th and April like 4th or something? April 3rd, April 2nd, something like that? First week in April, the last week in March, I will be in Brazil. That's going to give you some time to focus on this, your sketchbook, and anything else that I can come up with to keep you busy, but those 2 things should keep you pretty busy. Think of this, some of you are like, oh, we want to do a design project. We talked about design studio. Part of this is a design project. How you choose to present the information is a design project. And we're going to walk through some of those tonight, the USC clips. All right. So what I want to do now is I'm going to give you guys about 20 minutes. Please dig through this book. Put your name up here. Put your building up here. 1 building per person. You can barter, you can trade, you can, somebody wants to do your chores for you for a week because you have the building they want. I'm not going to impede that process. But in 20 minutes, that's going to be the building you live with. And the reason I say that's going to be the building you live with is this is an exceedingly difficult project if you change your mind in 3 weeks. It happens every semester. Somebody comes to me and goes, I don't really like my building anymore. And I tell them, look, precedent studies are not necessarily about liking the building. Precedent studies are about understanding it. And if you thought you liked it, and then you did the precedent study, and you found out you hated it. So now that we've all selected our buildings that we will work with for the balance of the semester. I know, it's such a tough decision.
It's heartbreaking.
What was wrong with what you had written up there?
This one's too big.
Okay, let's pause for a moment. The size of the building is kind of irrelevant.
This, you can see that from the plans they had in there.
Okay, take a
That
picture of the
looks
board
pretty
so
nice.
you can recall in 3 weeks what project is yours. I mean, ideally, you would start
Hard to
working on
believe
this
someone
right
lives
away.
there.
Oftentimes, my students
Some
don't.
rich dude.
So take a picture so you don't ask me what building you picked, because I will not remember. All right, so I'm going to direct your attention over here to the board, and I'll put this link up on Canvas for you. This is a bunch of student work from USC done about 10 years ago, but it's precedent studies. So we're going to walk through 4 or 5 of them and talk about what's good about them, what's not good about them. We're doing precedent study research on precedent studies. And the internet's a beautiful thing, right? When I was in school, you just really learned from the people that were immediately around you, which is also a great resource. But we couldn't just pull up, hey, what are people at USC doing? What are people at Harvard doing? You can do that now with the internet, so I encourage you to do so. So much so that we're gonna spend some time here in class this evening going over it. So I'm gonna pick a couple. You might see some of the same architects' names as you saw. Here's a Frank Gehry building. There's an Ondo building up there, Stephen Hall building. Different buildings by Grim Koolhaas. So we're gonna start with this one because I think it actually does a pretty decent job. And this is a building you all can actually go see. This is Central Phoenix Library, done by Will Bruder. Some of you may have already been in this building. It just pulls up a PDF of the project. Students did. Now again, this is all student work. And we don't have the benefit of speaking to them about why they did what they did, but we can start to analyze it and look at it. Obviously, in this one, the student has given us some information right off the bat. Tells us what the building is, that's kind of important. That's a good piece of information. Gives us some overall photos to kind of put the building in context. I don't know if these are the best photos of the building. He could have, and he gives us all this kind of biographical information. What I mean by biographical information is who the architect was, when it was built, how many square feet. It's all like kind of the objective information about the building. Is that important in a precedent study? I think it's important to frame the conversation. Is it important that this particular library was 100,000 square feet or whatever it happens to be? That's not the most important thing about the building. So you can't just stop at the biographical. What this means is don't just go to the Wikipedia page about your building and be like, boom, I'm done, here's all my research. It's a really great place to start, but it is not the end-all, be-all of the project. You really want to get into the details. This project is not necessarily about you going and just gathering information. It's about you tearing through the plans, the sections, the elevations, the site plans, and understanding why the architect did what they did. And you can only do that by actually going through the process of diagramming. So they provide us a site plan. That's nice, except the north is not up. And they give us a little blurb about why the building happened. Here's some interior pictures of the building and the floor plans. What you will find in all these precedent studies is the plans, the sections, the elevations are very important. So, as you start your research into these various buildings that you've selected, do you think it's important that you go get good plans, good sections, good elevations? Yes, they're going to be the template that you diagram on top of. So for the next class, when we meet after spring break, your plan, your section, your elevations should be done. The ones you're going to use as your background images. I don't care if you draw them in AutoCAD, I don't care if you build it in Revit, I don't care if you draw them by hand. What I do not want you to do is just take a photocopy of somebody else's plan. I want you to actually draw the plan, even if you are literally just tracing it. You may ask yourself, why would I do that? Why would I draw a plan that's already been drawn? Anybody want to answer that question? Yeah, by going through it and actually physically doing it, it will give you a greater understanding of what was done. So, again, if you want to bust out the T-square and draw with your T-square or your parallel bar out here in the lab, that's fine. You want to draw it in AutoCAD, that's fine. You want to draw it in Revit. I don't care what tool you use, but get the background plans down. And they don't have to be super detailed. You can see these plans are not very detailed. They show the major elements. Here we go, we got some more information and we have elevations. Has the student given us any analysis at this point? No, they basically just gathered all this information for us. They have not analyzed it at all. They have not given us anything more than what we could find on Google. All right. Now the student is starting to dissect the building. And they're thinking about it in abstract terms. So here, they're talking about the vertical elements that comprise the building, the vertical structural elements. And really, all these diagrams illustrate like bookends, right? So this architect chose to make the east and west sides of the building essentially solid, like a canyon. And then the north and south sides of this building are all transparent. Again, to reinforce that kind of canyon-like feel. In Arizona, metaphor of canyon, does that make sense? In Grand Canyon, maybe? You see the next one, it talks about the horizontal elements or the floor plates. I'm not sure if that's the most important part about this building, but that diagram deals with one specific idea. What that diagram shows me is that the horizontal floor plates really aren't that important, that the vertical columns probably are much more important. Especially if I'm standing on the outside looking at this building, I'm going to see these long vertical columns that are reinforced by the fence. The one with the red down here talks about circulation. Not in a very convincing way, but most buildings, how you move through them is very, very important. In this particular building, they spent all their money on the central glass elevator system and the stairs that wrap around it. I don't think that diagram does a good job of showing that that's what really activates the space, but a circulation diagram is probably important in almost every project. And you can see, the thing that I like about this is these diagrams definitely deal with one idea each. And those are the best diagrams, the ones that are simple, concise, and deal with one idea. And you can do 50 of them, it doesn't matter, as long as they deal with one idea each. All right. This diagram, using color and a three-dimensional type drawing, really does help explain the relationship of the exterior kind of bookends or canyon walls, and then kind of the light nature of everything in between the canyon walls. And if you've ever actually been in this building, you know that it's about kind of this lightness between these two heavy masses. Anybody actually been in this building? Next time you're in Phoenix, I suggest you go. And then he has a bunch of more random pictures. Look, random pictures are only useful if they help emphasize your point. All of us can do a Google image search. I do not want you to do a Google image search and give me 50 thumbnails of the building. If you're going to use imagery, make sure it reinforces the point that you're trying to get across. This is the top floor. It actually is a really interesting space. And that's the whole study. I would say that this is starting to get where we want to go, these diagrams, but the rest of it is, it's biographical information at that point, right? It's images that I could have looked up on the internet, it's the Wikipedia information I could have pulled. It doesn't show a level of analysis that I'm looking for you to dig deeper. And you might be saying, but we're not at USC. USC is an important school of architecture, and we're just some little community college. I don't care. You're all capable of doing work that's better than this. Whether you choose to do the work or not is a whole other question, but it's not because you're not capable of doing it. And it's not because people who go to USC possess some innate talent. It's difficult for them as well. They work hard, they have successes, and they have failures just like you would. But I don't want to hear, oh, that's USC, or that's MIT, or that's Harvard. Look at another one. Ondo's Church of Light. Again, the biographical information, a site plan, some pictures. A section, a plan, doesn't even look like these were drawn by the student. Another site plan, or rather floor plan that kind of shows us this space, that space. Any analysis yet? Not until we kind of get down here and they start diagramming the building. So it's important to give us the biographical, it's important to show us the undiagrammed or basic plan of the building, the basic section, the basic elevation. But then I want you to get into these. These are difficult to read, would you agree? Yeah, it could just be that they scan them in black and white. But they're weird angles. It's great that you can model stuff in 3D and it will let you view it from any angle, but that's disorientating. If you're going to show three-dimensional models, if you look at the last precedent study, they were all from the same perspective. So I didn't have to rethink about how to orientate myself every time I looked at a diagram. Every time I look at one of these diagrams, I gotta go, what part of the building am I looking at? This building is not that large. Oh no, now I'm looking from the back, now I'm looking at it from the front. Be consistent in how you frame, you know, you want to deal with one idea. You want to deal with that idea in relationship to the other ideas. You don't want the person looking at this going, what part of the building is this? And why are there two wings over here if there's only one wing? Yeah. Not a good example, in my opinion, of being clear about what you're trying to communicate. Let's fix some other ones. There's a more, an older building to show you that you can do it with an old building. It doesn't have to be overwatered. All right? This is the Paris Opera House. This building is 100% about procession, not only through the building, but procession all the way through the city. It was an event to go to the opera when this was built. Obviously, it's very ornate, because that was what was appropriate for the time that it was built. So, you know, some photos, that's great. Here is a good diagram. It talks about, it's hard to see up there on the screen, but those arrows talk about how different people would enter the building. If this building was about procession, about entrance, that may be important. It could be that simple of a diagram.
So that would be the circulation diagram?
It would be one of the circulation diagrams. You can see, they've used, I don't know what this diagram is about, because there's no legend, there's no way to tell me what this diagram is about, but I assume it's about different types of spaces. Again, just the plans, the elevation, section, another elevation, another section. Now we get to some diagrams. Does this diagram here tell me anything? No, it's just a 3D mapping of the building. That's something that you would diagram over. This is not a diagram. The roof plan, does this tell me anything? No, there's no information. Does this tell me anything? Well, I'm assuming that that's a staircase or something. Is it very clear? Does this diagram tell me anything? No, I'm guessing at what they're trying to show me. Is that clear? Is it concise? No. Is it visually compelling? No, kind of. You get this 3D of the building, you've made some colors. Well, what is it? What is that cylinder? What does that mean? What are you trying to tell us? Just a simple legend next to us that said, you know, public versus private, or circulation versus seating, or so, whatever it is that they're trying to show us would be important. Do you agree? I'm not sure what this diagram shows us. Huge wall in the middle of the building? Oh, is that symmetry? Is it balance? Is that the best way to show it? Would a plan be a better way to show it? I don't think it's very easily understood from that perspective, is it? So 3D is not always the answer. Just because you can do a 3D doesn't mean that it's the best response for the information you're trying to communicate. All right, so what do you think about that? Do you have a great understanding of Charles Garnier's Opera House? No, and if you really do the research, and I don't think anybody picked this building, but that's a fascinating building. Fascinating building, the way it talked about French culture at the time, the class system, how you arrived at the theater, the role it held in the social structure, not to mention the structural. If you look at the section down here, this is an amazing building. There's so much going on in here. Back of house, private spaces, public spaces, circulation. I mean, It's a really intense building, and it's really well thought out. This precedent study doesn't do it justice. If this student said, hey, I understand the Paris Opera House, I would say I'd beg to differ based on your analysis of it. Because I don't understand what you're trying to tell me about it. This is not what you want to do.
So you don't want us throwing random things up there just to throw them up there. You want us to explain like this diagram's up here because of the lighting, or this diagram's up here because to show the circulation, or this diagram's up here for this, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I never want you to do something, well, one, we could have a whole debate about what random actually is, because random
Well, like you said, the
doesn't
ones
really
that already
exist.
do it.
But if we go back to design studio and the design process and things we've talked about, it's about being aware. So you want to be aware of what you're doing, why you're doing it, what you're trying to communicate. You want to convince me that your building is a great building. Why? Why? If you can look back at it and still say, I haven't answered the question, why? So when you come next week, or not next week, it's spring break, following week, and you say, my building is important because, you should have a diagram that answers that. That says that visually, just like you're saying it verbally. All right, let's pick another one. Louis Kahn. Louis Kahn's a good architect. Trying to pick ones I haven't seen before. So I'm giving you just my initial reaction to these projects. All right, Louis Kahn, Salk Institute Meeting House. Pictures, that's good, some biographical information. A bunch of scans of Louis Kahn's drawings. Do I want you just to give me scans of drawings? I want you to actually execute the drawing. There is value in you executing the drawing. How many of you have taken a drafting class or a studio or? Good. So a lot of you haven't. This may be the first time that you're actually drawing something. You're going to find out that it's difficult. That's okay. That's part of the process. But I don't want you. I'm sure you're all capable of going on the internet and downloading images. Oh look. Here's some other drawings. I don't know why I put them on my board, because I just needed them to fill up space. So no, you don't want any filler. Concise information. No filler.
So when we do the drawings, does it have to be exactly the same?
Well, you're not designing a building, so be as close as possible.
We can't add our ideas.
No, you don't get to add your ideas to these buildings. That is not the purpose of this project. At some point, you'll be able to add the buildings, but the purpose of this project is understanding the buildings. So no, we want you to understand what they did. We don't care about your ideas, right? Well, it's not that we don't care, but no, really, it's that we don't care about your ideas, right? You'll get there, right? But first, before you start adding your ideas to something, you need to understand what it is. So in first year, second year study, we normally do a project where you have to do a visitor center for a really important building, where you may add on to that building, or you may choose to build that visitor center away from that building. But the project is not about you at that point, it's about that building. So this project is not about you. I don't want you I want you to be creative in how you show us this building, but I don't want you to design your own building. You'll get there. All right, so now we have a bunch of pictures that we downloaded, and a blurb about materiality. Oh, look, and now we finally get to some diagrams. What's that diagram about? Oh, this one is squished in a really weird perspective, so it distorts everything. What's this diagram about?
How I use
No.
What's this diagram about?
Framing?
Oh, down here it kind of tells you. Number 5, massing of the meeting house. Profound.
I don't even know.
These are not very clear, are they? And they're not numbered, so maybe that's not number 5, maybe that's number 5. I'm going to assume that this is number 6, division of space. I don't know how that shows division of space, it's just a wireframe drawing. So don't think that, hey, I modeled this in some 3D modeling software, my job is done, I just turn layers on and off. And that's not what the precedent study is about. It's about really communicating what is this building about. So if I'm going to draw a diagram that's about massing, why is massing important? And what diagram is going to best illustrate the relationship of the masses to one another? That's not an easy question to answer. This isn't something you're going to do a napkin sketch and you're going to be done. You're going to have to develop diagrams, and you're going to have to develop iterations of that diagram until people are like, yeah, that's really clear. I really understand. All right, so, oh, here's some sketches. You think they're sketches the student did?
No.
Because this building was not built, there is record of many sketches that Kahn did. Why is that important? I mean, it probably is important, but they didn't even bother to diagram sketches. This is all about analyzing what was done, not just telling us it was done. So did this student complete the project?
No.
Well, maybe they did at USC. Maybe they felt that was adequate, and but they wouldn't have completed the project for this class. The project I'm asking you to do. Let's do another. Here's a Zumthor project. And I want to be picked a Zumthor project. Again, more stuff produced by somebody else, pictures, site plan. Not that this stuff is bad. But this is a starting point. It's still loading. Figured round drawings, I'm not sure this shows us a whole lot of information. I'm pretty sure these are images just right off his website. Here's a section. But if I wasn't reading this text next to it, these don't really make a whole lot of sense, do they? Except we understand this is mountain, this is space. Some sketches that I'm sure Peter Zumthor did. Here's some construction details. Is this important? It might be. You want to bet the student that threw those on there probably didn't understand them completely? Probably not. Probably found the construction details and said, hey, this looks busy, I can throw it in my presentation. Okay, this says path. Now, I assume this little red thing back here is the path. Is this the best way to show it? Most of what you're trying to show me is obscure. So maybe a plan would have been a better way to show this particular item. Private. I don't know what that space is, but that's private and that's a path. So I assume that that means the rest of this is public. Inhabited, is that what that says? It looks like it's misspelled. Maybe it cut off. Inhabited volumes. Exposed baths. These are the same diagram basically, aren't they? One's just white, one's red. Relationship or relation to exterior. Does that make sense? Does that show us the context and the exterior of the building? At least they're all in the same, they're the same scale, they're the same perspective. But you really think that this gives a good understanding of the building? All right, so you might be like, wow, he showed us a bunch of stuff from USC, and none of it was really overly impressive. You agree? Okay, so that doesn't mean that there aren't impressive precedent studies out there. And there's actually some pretty impressive precedent studies within this USC stuff. I recall the one for the Seattle Public Library. This is the one that looks pretty good. And these are not obviously the only examples that are on the internet, right? This just happens to be a resource to see several of them at once. Okay. Now these diagrams, this talks about the concept. And I don't recall if these were, I think these were the diagrams actually done by the architect. But they talk about the concept and why it shifts back and forth. OMA is known for diagramming their own work quite intensely. So I can't tell you if the student did these diagrams or OMA did these diagrams. But like that is a good diagram. Continuous circulation. This building was really about a ramp. This is a diagram that was published in the Seattle paper. The student didn't do this diagram, but this type of information makes it very easy to understand the project. Would you agree? This is really bad Photoshop work where they didn't take out the center of the O's. But because the architect had already diagrammed this so well, this uses color to tell us what the different uses of the building is. Easy to understand. I don't expect that you guys are going to do full-blown axonometric drawings like this. Again, the architect did this. You can see it's a crummy scan because they have the wrinkles in it. But these diagrams like this talk about the old library and the new library and how they reorganized it. This almost looks like when your hard drive is defragmenting. It takes all the pieces, puts them in the right order. We kind of went through that process. Here's a diagram that talks about how the structure of the building works. Again, they stole this from the Seattle paper. But those are solid diagrams. Let's see if the student actually did any. No. He did none of their own work. Same building. And they took some other diagrams from the newspaper, right? Don't these look familiar? So if you happen to find a building that has some really good information that's diagrammed, I'm not saying that you can't build on that, you can't use it, but don't just copy and paste it. Do you think the student who copy and pasted that onto their work really understood what the diagram meant? They might have, but the likelihood is they were just like, oh, cool, I found something, I can throw it on there as filler. And my instructor will think I did a really good job. And again, I don't know what their directions were for the precedent study, so maybe they were doing exactly what they were asked to do. But you can see, these are the same diagrams. That's kind of an interesting drawing. Again, it wasn't their drawing. Same circulation diagram that we saw earlier. At least here they show it in two ways. They show it in an axon and a section. On a building like that where the architect's already diagrammed everything, don't they show that twice in this building, this presentation? That's really bad too. Use somebody else's work and we used it twice. I would not recommend that this is the way to go about it. So this is somebody actually picked this project, right? This was one of the projects in that book. Well, here we have a little bit of work, right? So we've shown an overall city plan. We've done a blow up to a larger scale site plan. It gives us context. Floor plan clearly labeled, so we understand the parts of it. These are the watercolor sketches the architect actually did. Simple labels to tell us this is section A, this is section B, so we can see section A, section B. A real simple diagram about how these spaces work with one another. Here's a diagram about light. I don't know if it's the best diagram about light, but it is the student's own work. Talks about how light enters the building. Here's a diagram about geometry, what was used to kind of organize the space. Pictures of the construction. The acoustics. This is a pretty common acoustic diagram where source of sound and how it bounces around. Here's some very good diagrams that compare a typical cathedral circulation to the circulation in his, the sequence. So he says the nonlinear spatial sequence of the chapel is striking when seen in contrast to other churches. That's a good diagram. Here's what we're used to seeing in most chapels. Here's the circulation path. So this is the start to some interesting ideas there. So we're going to definitely head much more towards this in your precedent settings. But you have to first figure out what it is you want to say. What am I going to talk about? What's important about this building? So when you come back from spring break, what are the things that you should have done? Don't all jump up at once and tell me. Yeah, you should come with a list of items that start with, my building is important because. And don't come with like 2 items. These are important buildings. It's better to start with lots and then we can pare them down. But don't come with like less than 10. What else do you need to do?
Have a diagram? Or like
No, you don't need to have any diagrams yet.
No?
You don't know enough to diagram. That's what we're going to talk about March 20th, is diagram.
Well, like a floor plan or?
You need to have your base drawings, floor plan, section, elevations done, that we're going to diagram on top of. So literally, we're going to take a piece of trace paper and put it over that drawing and draw on top of it. So if we're looking at these drawings right here, the diagramming is the red line. The drawing you need to have done is the black drawing beneath it.
Drawing like that?
What's that?
The drawing like that?
No, just the black portion. Just the drawing that's underneath the diagram. So floor plan, section, elevations. And if you think you're going to diagram something else, like you've just decided, hey, all my diagrams are going to be 3-dimensional, then you better have your 3-dimensional drawing done. Or model. So, again, you can use any tool you want to. Pencil, paper, pen, crayon, color pencil, Revit, AutoCAD, SketchUp, Rhino, I don't care. Use any tool you want to generate the drawing. If you're like, oh, I'm so intimidated, I don't know anything about any computer programs, I don't know anything about 3D, I will tell you in a weekend you can learn SketchUp. It is not difficult. By no means am I saying you have to use SketchUp. By no means am I saying you have to use a computer. You can produce this information any way you want. What I will tell you is you probably will learn a whole host of software through your career as an architecture student. So, no time like the present to start. But don't, if you've never used 3D Max, don't try to learn 3D Max to do this particular project. SketchUp would be a much better solution for you. SketchUp is a program. but you can do sketches. Diagrams are very precise drawings though, so you're not going to diagram on top of a sketch. It's going to either be a hard line drawing or, like literally, you can find these and trace them. I'm not particular how you get there, but I want you to go through the process of actually drawing those drawings, because it will reveal things about the building. So like the structural grid of the building. If you're drawing the floor plan, you'll have a much better understanding of that once you've drawn the floor plan. You'll understand the relationship. Those are the two things that you need to come with for your precedent setting. Now let's talk about your sketchbooks. Something you just sign. All right, so we have 14 days until I see you again. And I want you to do 2 sketches a day. I want you to do a 5-minute sketch, and I want you to do a 30-minute sketch of the same thing. I don't care what it is. I'll let you pick anything you want. But I want a 5-minute sketch and I want a 30-minute sketch, side by side.
How many?
1 for each day, 14. Comparison. Well, 28 sketches actually. 14 5-minute sketches, 14 30-minute sketches.
Where is it?
March 20th, when you come back in 14 days. Just do 1 a day. This is not the assignment that you want to wait till March 19th to start.
I probably will. Honestly, I'll probably forget about it, so.
It's a whole 35 minutes a day, guys.
That's exactly why it's easily forgettable.
It's easily forgettable.
Yeah.
Just get up in the morning and do a 5-minute sketch, and before you go to bed, do a 30-minute sketch. I don't care how you organize it,
Awesome.
but I want them side by side of the same thing. So if you want to spend 30 minutes drawing a water bottle, that's fine.
Sounds.
And in the same page or?
Adjacent pages.
Oh, okay.
It could be anything.
It could be anything. I'm not going to tell you it has to be a bicycle, a saw blade, a bottle. I want a 5-minute sketch and I want a 30-minute sketch of the same thing. 1 a day.
2 a day.
What's that?
Is that 2 a day?
Well, one set a day.
Oh, okay.
1 5-minute sketch, 1 30-minute sketch. We can do 2 a day.
I am okay with one.
Don't want you to miss that opportunity.
Oh, thank you.
If you want to do more, you can always do more. You cannot do less.
What about the ones we already drawn? Can we count that?
Oh, those, no, can you count them?
Yeah.
No. That's a separate assignment.
What are you trying to get off the hook?
Good try, though. A for effort on that one. No, you cannot. Hopefully you've already done those, because what do you think I'm going to look at on March 20th?
Probably those 2.
All of it. I want to see your sketchbooks on March 20th.
Really, have we done with those?
There's only one way to get better at sketching, and what is that?
To sketch.
Do it, right? Think of it as like meditation. You know for the next 14 days that you have to set aside half an hour to do nothing but sketch. You can let all your worries go away. You just block everything else out.
They're still there.
What's that?
No, they're still there.
You're still there? Well, for 30 minutes a day, you can block all those things out. 35 minutes a day.
Too specific.
But wait, there's more.
Oh, boy.
No, that's everything. I want you to enjoy some of your spring break.
I still have classes those days.
Do what?
Hey,
Hey, my studio students have a project due the day after spring break.
Oh, that's
They
nice
wanted
of
it.
you.
I gave them the option to either have it due before spring break or after, and they chose after. Something about, oh, we'll have more time to work on our projects. I was like, whatever. It's up to you. All right, questions?
Can we do Like 2 minutes and 20 minutes instead of 5 minutes and 30 minutes.
No, it's not a negotiation.
How
We should
big
try.
should we start our floor plans at on our building?
What scale should we start our floor plans at? This is a good question. It depends on how you eventually intend to present them. What I mean by that is if you're gonna scan them, you have a lot of flexibility, right? You can blow them up or shrink them. If you're going to present like physical boards, then you need to think about, if I put this board up here and somebody's sitting in the back of the room, can they read the floor plan? And the answer is probably not if you drew it at 4 inches by 6 inches. So part of that is you deciding, very good question, by the way. Part of that is you deciding how you eventually intend to present it.
And so when we talk about scanning it or something, could we potentially have, you know, like a pamphlet that we could hand out to everyone?
Absolutely.
To go through, okay.
Absolutely. We're going to talk about that individually. Every one of your presentations will be slightly different. It's just the way it works. Yes, sir.
On the plans, is the dimension of any importance? Or
The scale is of importance. Dimension at this
you don't
point
care
is
about
not
the
of
dimension?
importance.
Okay.
So they have to be proportional, right? They have to
Well,
be
yeah, I would hope
scaled.
so.
Some people take plans and they squish them and stretch them. That changes the whole meaning of the plan, right?
So how many drawings are there?
2.
28.
No, that's it. For the drawings, a minimum of 6. Floor plan section and 4 elevations. You may need to do more depending on your building.
I will.
You may say, hey, these 2 sides of the building look the same, so I'm going to do 2 sections and not 4 elevations. I do 3 elevations and 2 sections. But a minimum of 6 drawings is what I expect on March 20th. I'm going to let you guys out like an hour early, a whole hour more. Questions?
Yeah, when you keep saying drawings, you want us to draw them or just print them out and bring them, like, so we could?
Draw them,
Sectional.
redraw them.
No, no, no.
You
I want you to draw
redraw
them. Even if you're tracing them, I want your hand to actually go through the process of generating that drawing.
So you should be on
So we shouldn't do it with AutoCAD or no, just on paper?
AutoCAD, Revit, SketchUp, pencil, paper, whatever you're
Clear
comfortable.
about this.
As long as you went through the process. Don't search
Yeah.
AutoCAD drawing of such and such building and download it. I mean, at the end of the day, you guys could do that, right? Am I going to be any the wiser? I might be. But am I going to chase you down and try to track that down? No. And the reason is,
Expect you.
you're not doing this for me. This is for you, right? This is your education. So if you want to use AutoCAD, that's a great tool. If you want to game the system and you want to find somebody who's already drawn it in SketchUp and that's what you're going to use, can I stop you from doing that? No. I'm going to tell you you're going to get less out of the assignment, less out of the experience, if you choose to do that. All right, any other questions? All right, if there are no questions, we'll let you guys go. Please enjoy your spring break. And we'll reconvene on the 20th. We'll get deeper into these processes. Now, please, 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 come prepared on the 20th. If you don't come prepared on the 20th, it's like you throw that day away. It's important for this project to be successful, you're prepared. Yes, sir.
Was any of your questions, if you have any?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, very good. Have a good week, enjoy your spring break.